Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Every breach starts with something small. A trusted login, a missed alert, a system no one thought could matter. Here, we follow the incident. How it began, how it moved, what broke under pressure, and what security engineering and business teams should learn before the next one. Because the next attack will not wait for a perfect plan. Now, let's follow the evidence.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure, real attacks, real lessons. Today is Wednesday, June 24th, 2026.
Wow.
You can't make this up. Well, you could, but nobody would believe you. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the absolute nightmare that is OT security remote access, specifically in the railway sector.
Nightmare is, well, it's probably the most technically generous term we could use today, I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, if people actually understood how close we are to the edge on a daily basis, well, they'd probably just start taking the bus.
Right. And look, if you're listening to this deep dive, you already know the basics. You know the threat landscape is evolving. You know what a flat network is. And you probably have at least a morbid curiosity about how fragile our critical infrastructure truly is.
Morbid is definitely the right word.
So our mission today, and I'm speaking directly to you, the listener, is to unpack a massive stack of incredibly dense engineering and cybersecurity standards. Dense is putting it mildly.
Seriously. Specifically, we're tearing into Synelec TS 50701 and IEC 62443, and we are going to translate these rigid, highly theoretical frameworks into the terrifying, fascinating reality of how trains are actually kept safe from adversaries.
And I think we need to set the baseline reality right from the jump here.
Go for it.
When we talk about securing operational technology, especially rail, we are not talking about Hollywood scenarios.
Yeah.
There is no guy in a dark room furiously typing on 6 monitors to, bypass a glowing red firewall and derail a locomotive.
Right. No matrix code raining down.
Exactly. The reality is so much dumber, and frankly, that makes it exponentially harder to defend against.
Because you can't predict it.
Right. We aren't just trying to stop an elite APT group from a hostile nation state. I mean, yes, we do that, but the everyday threat. We're trying to stop our own mid-level maintenance worker from plugging a $50 commercial wireless dongle into a critical control board.
Just because he didn't feel like walking out into the rain to check a diagnostic log.
Precisely. It's human nature.
So we are fighting human convenience just as much as we're fighting malicious code. Which actually brings us to the first major issue we pulled from the source material.
The geography problem.
Yes, the physical geography of railway infrastructure and how it completely obliterates any traditional concept of an IT perimeter. Because, well, in enterprise IT or even in a manufacturing OT environment, your perimeter is literal, right? It's a concrete box.
Correct. You secure a car factory, you have 4 walls.
Yeah.
Your robotics, your SCADA systems, your PLCs, they are physically contained. You put guards at the doors, badge readers on the turnstiles, maybe a massive next-gen firewall at your single internet gateway. You build a castle.
But a national rail network.
Your perimeter isn't a wall. Your perimeter is 5,000 miles of exposed copper, fiber, and trackside boxes stretching across mountain ranges, deep urban subway tunnels, and desolate rural plains.
You literally have zero physical control over the environment.
Zero.
And out in that vast sprawl, you have these things called signaling houses. The source material focuses heavily on them as a primary vector.
Yes, signaling houses. I mean, a signaling house is basically an unassuming concrete or metal shed sitting out in the middle of nowhere.
Like next to a cornfield?
Yeah, maybe next to a level crossing in a cornfield, or bolted to the wall of a damp underground tunnel. Inside that shed is your critical safety equipment.
Stuff like interlocking controllers.
Interlocking controllers, track circuit monitors, communication relays. It is both a physical access point and a highly sensitive digital entry point into the backbone of the railway network.
But historically, the defense for these places was just the legendary air gap, right? Pure isolation.
Right. The idea was that because these systems weren't hardwired to the internet, they were untouchable.
Makes sense.
True. In theory. Tack it. An attacker would physically have to break the padlock on the shed, walk inside, and plug a laptop directly into the serial port of a 20-year-old controller.
Which honestly sounds pretty robust until you factor in the operational realities of maintaining a network that massive.
Precisely. Enter the maintenance crews.
Ah.
These are the guys responsible for keeping the trains moving. And they have punishing SLAs, service level agreements. So if a fault light goes off in a remote signaling house that is, say, a 5-hour drive from the regional depot and there's a blizzard outside.
Oh man, I can see exactly where this is going.
It's just human nature. A maintenance engineer who is probably brilliant at mechanical systems but completely unaware of modern cyber threat landscapes, he says to himself, I am not driving 500 miles round trip just to pull a plain text diagnostic log ever again.
Yeah, you can't blame him.
You really can't. So what does he do? The next time he's out there, he brings a cheap commercial 4G or 5G cellular modem.
Wow.
He quietly wires it into the diagnostic port of the trackside Ethernet switch, sets up an unencrypted remote desktop connection, and goes home.
And he doesn't tell anyone.
Never.
He definitely doesn't log a ticket with the CISO sitting in a glass tower back in the Capitol. So now we have what the industry calls shadow OT.
Shadow OT.
Yeah.
Just saying the phrase makes my blood pressure spike.
I bet.
The moment that $50 consumer modem boots up and connects to the public cellular network, the entire multi-million-dollar air gap collapses. All your enterprise firewalls, your intrusion detection systems, your SOC completely bypass.
Wait, so we spend millions building a digital fortress, and the drawbridge is essentially lowered by our own guy who just wanted to save gas money.
That is exactly what happens. Physical convenience trumps cybersecurity every single time.
And because we all know the nightmare of legacy flat networks, the implications here are catastrophic. I mean, listeners know that without microsegmentation, east-west traffic is essentially a free-for-all.
Yo.
If I'm an attacker and I pop a weak lobby Wi-Fi in a corporate network, modern zero-trust architecture usually stops me from pivoting into the HR database, but in a rail OT environment.
There is no internal segmentation. You have to remember the era these systems were designed in.
Yeah.
Legacy OT systems were built on the fundamental assumption of absolute inherent trust.
Meaning, if you're in, you're trusted.
Right. If a device is on the wire, it is assumed to be a trusted piece of safety equipment. There's no authentication header on a Modbus TCP packet. It just executes the command.
So if that maintenance worker's cheap 4G modem gets scanned on Shodan and compromised by an automated botnet, the attacker doesn't just get to see a diagnostic log.
No. They are sitting on a flat, unsegmented network that connects directly to the interlocking systems. They are on the backbone.
Wow.
From that compromised cellular router,
Yeah.
they can theoretically, and in many legacy architectures, practically jump straight to the radio block center.
And since the radio block center communicates with the onboard train control and management system,
The PCMS, yes.
Yeah.
You have a potential unfiltered pathway right to the train's dynamic braking system.
Uh.
All because a guy didn't want to drive in the snow.
you know, it's wild to think about. I'm just thinking about how often we bypass security in our own daily lives just for a tiny fraction of convenience.
Oh, all the time.
Reusing a password across 3 accounts, or disabling MFA on a trusted device because we're tired of checking our phones. It's the exact same psychological impulse.
It is. But the blast radius is slightly different.
Fair point.
If you reuse a password, maybe your credit card gets cloned. In the railway sector, bypassing security for convenience translates to kinetic physical disaster. You have thousands of tons of steel moving at 300 kilometers an hour, carrying hundreds of passengers. The gap between convenience and derailment is terrifyingly narrow.
Which naturally leads to the most infuriating question for any IT security professional listening. If you know these rogue modems are out there, why not just scan the network, find the unauthorized MA addresses, and shut them down? But the source material specifically and repeatedly warns against active probing. It highlights this absolute philosophical war between traditional IT security and OT engineering.
Oh, it's a war. It is a holy war, and the two sides speak completely mutually unintelligible languages.
Let's look at the foundational frameworks. In traditional IT security, the entire universe revolves around the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability.
In that exact order.
Right. If there is a suspected breach, IT's immediate reflexive response is to protect the confidentiality of the data. You sever the connection, you lock out the users, you take the server offline.
Right. But if you take an OT system offline, trains crash.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. OT engineers, the people actually managing the physical physics of the railway, will aggressively counter your CIA triad with RAMs: reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety.
Notice what's missing. Confidentiality doesn't even make the list.
They literally don't care if someone reads the data, not even a little bit.
No.
An OT engineer doesn't care if a hacker intercepts the telemetry data of a track switch.
Because it's just telemetry.
Right. They care that the switch physically moves when it is mathematically scheduled to move, every single time, without a millisecond of deviation. Safety and reliability are paramount. If an IT guy shuts down the network to, quote-unquote, protect it, they've just violated the OT core requirement: availability.
So what actually happens when an overzealous IT security team decides they want to secure the railway network using their standard enterprise tools? Say a new CISO comes in and says, hey, we're going to run Nmap across the whole subnet to find these rogue modems.
Absolute, unmitigated disaster.
Tell me.
The source documents detail this beautifully. We call it active probing. In an enterprise IT environment, you run a vulnerability scan, you ping an IP address, you check for open ports, and the server just replies, here I am, and goes about its business. The TCP/IP stack on a modern server can handle millions of concurrent connections.
But the TCP/IP stack on a legacy programmable logic controller
Is virtually non-existent.
Yeah.
We are talking about legacy serial-to-IP converters and communication protocols like Profibus running on PLCs that have microprocessors from 1998.
1998.
Yeah. These devices are designed to do one highly specific mathematical control loop over and over again, deterministically. They have incredibly tiny memory buffers.
Right, so the networking stack on those old chips just isn't built to handle malformed packets or active probes or rapid connection requests.
Exactly. When the IT vulnerability scanner hits that legacy PLC with a barrage of active SYN requests, the PLC's networking stack simply cannot process the unexpected traffic. The buffer instantly overflows, the processor spikes to 100% utilization, and the device goes into what we call a freeze-in state failure.
It essentially has a digital panic attack and completely locks up.
It drops the control loop entirely. And in a safety-critical system, a frozen controller means the system doesn't know where the train is anymore. The fail-safe protocol kicks in, and the system halts everything.
It's like trying to change the tires on a car while it's driving at 100 miles an hour on the highway.
Pretty much.
You're trying to inject modern disruptive security controls into a kinetic process that physically cannot pause for even a microsecond.
That's a great way to look at it. And it's not just scanning. The source material highlights another massive systemic issue: latency.
Right, latency.
Let's say IT decides, okay, no scanning, but we are going to put a standard next-gen firewall in line between the trackside equipment and the central control room to block unauthorized remote access.
Makes sense on paper.
On paper. In the IT world, if a firewall introduces a 200 millisecond latency spike while it performs deep packet inspection on a payload, nobody cares. 200 milliseconds is a minor, completely unnoticeable lag on a Zoom call or, loading a cloud application.
But in the European train control system,
In ETCS, timing is literally life or death. The system relies on continuous real-time communication between the train and the radio block sensor.
I see.
If that new inline firewall delays an ETCS packet by 200 milliseconds, the train's onboard computer registers a loss of continuous communication with the track.
And let me guess, the train doesn't just buffer and wait for the connection to reestablish.
No. It enters a failsafe mode. It triggers the emergency brakes. Pneumatic air valves open, pressure drops, and the train clamps down. Over a 200 millisecond packet delay.
Unbelievable. So traditional IT security is like a doctor trying to cure a patient's mild cough with a medicine that accidentally stops their heart.
Exactly. Your IT security control designed to keep the train safe just caused a fully loaded passenger train to dump its air brakes and violently skid to a halt in the middle of the main line. You've stranded passengers, disrupted the entire regional timetable, and created a massive physical hazard, all in the name of cybersecurity.
It's unbelievable. And it's compounded by what the documents refer to as the 30-year problem, the patching paradox.
The bane of my existence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. An IT server has a life cycle of maybe 3 to 5 years before it's decommissioned and replaced. A railway interlocking system, the complex logic that ensures two trains can literally never be routed onto the same track segment at the same time, has a life cycle of 30 to 40 years. It is rigorously, mathematically tested, certified by an independent safety assessment board, and then permanently locked down.
I want to read a specific quote from our research on this because it really crystallizes the insanity of the situation.
Oh,
Quote, install a security update on a critical interlocking system without CAB approval, and you don't just void a certification. You risk triggering a mechanical response on live tracks that the safety case never anticipated. The patch closes a CVE, it opens a hazard. End quote.
That is the crux of the entire IT-OT conflict right there. A CVE is a common vulnerabilities and exposures logging a known software bug. IT demands you patch it immediately. CISA might even legally mandate that you patch it within 14 days if it's a known exploited vulnerability.
Right, but legally, from the OT side, how do they square that? If you change the code, you invalidate the safety certification?
You do. You no longer mathematically know for a fact how that system will behave under stress. The safety board signed off on version 1.0. If you push version 1.1 over the air to fix a remote execution bug, you are operating an uncertified, technically illegal safety system.
That is a massive catch-22.
It is. OT engineers will fight tooth and nail against IT patching mandates because an unpatched system is vulnerable to a hacker. But a patched system is essentially uncertified, unpredictable, and potentially lethal.
So we have geographic sprawl, rogue shadow modems, flat networks, devices that crash if you scan them, firewalls that trigger emergency brakes, and systems that you are legally forbidden to patch.
Sounds fun, right?
Which begs the question, is this just a theoretical academic exercise? Are adversaries actually exploiting this specific friction?
I wish it were just an academic debate. It is not.
The threat landscape we're reviewing here proves this is happening right now. You've pulled 3 case studies from the sources that highlight completely different vectors of this exact vulnerability. Let's start with Denmark, late 2022.
Right. Late 2022, trains across the entire country of Denmark were suddenly halted for hours. Complete nationwide systemic disruption. But the terrifying part is how it happened. It wasn't a direct attack on the train's tracks, the signaling houses, or the physical OT network.
Then what forced the stop?
They attacked an IT subcontractor, specifically a software vendor named Suvani that provided a testing environment for a train dispatching application. The subcontractor suffered a cyber attack, and to contain the blast radius, they isolated and shut down their servers.
But wait, why did the physical trains stop if the tracks weren't hacked? If it's just a dispatching app in a third-party cloud?
Because of the deep operational dependencies of modern rail architecture, under systems like ETMS Level 2, dispatching schedules and safety protocols are completely interlocked.
Oh, I see.
The train drivers rely on cryptographic token validation and real-time updates pushed to their tablets from those servers. When the Suvani subcontractor went down, it wasn't just servers off. It meant the dispatchers lost visibility and control of the mathematical safety margins between trains. If you can't guarantee the safety margin, the rule is you halt the train.
So this perfectly illustrates the massive vulnerability of third-party remote access and supply chain concentration risk.
Yep.
You can spend $1 billion securing your physical rail network with data diodes and armed guards. But if the cloud vendor who supplies your operational diagnostic software gets hit with ransomware, you are still completely dead in the water.
Exactly. You are outsourcing your availability risk to a vendor who might be prioritizing their own data confidentiality over your physical uptime.
Okay, let's look at a completely different vector. Poland, 2023. This is the one that actually gave me chills when I read the report, because it bypasses the IP network entirely. We're worried about elite cyber syndicates, and a couple of guys with off-the-shelf walkie-talkies brought 20 trains to a screeching halt.
This is the one that keeps OT engineers awake at night. Saboteurs didn't use sophisticated IP hacking, they didn't breach a firewall, they didn't phish a password, they used cheap analog radios.
That is just nuts.
They tuned into the unencrypted VHF radio frequencies used by the Polish railway network and broadcast unauthorized radio stop signals.
Detail the mechanics of that. A radio stop signal is just an emergency command sent over open airwaves.
Yes, it's a legacy analog safety feature. In an emergency, if there's an obstruction on the track, a train driver or a dispatcher can broadcast a specific sequence of 3 audio tones over the VHF radio.
Just 3 tones?
Just 3 tones. Any train receiver in a 10-kilometer radius that hears those 3 tones will automatically instantly trigger its emergency brakes.
And it's unauthenticated by design, right? Because in an emergency, you don't have time for a digital handshake.
Exactly. You can't wait for a cryptographic key exchange when you're about to hit a derailed freight car. The attackers exploited the safety-first design. They recorded those 3 tones and just played them back over the airwaves using off-the-shelf walkie-talkies.
Imagine you're the driver. You're doing 120 kilometers an hour at night. The cab is quiet. Suddenly, 3 analog tones blast over the radio. Boop, beep, boop, and before you can even touch the console, the main brake pipe vents to the atmosphere.
Yep.
The entire train violently shudders, sparks fly off the wheels, and you're skidding in the dark. And you look at the dispatch board, and there's no obstruction, just ghost signals.
Over 20 trains halted. Massive cascading disruption. And it bypassed all the multi-million-dollar IT network defenses entirely. It didn't matter how good your next-gen firewalls were or if you had zero trust implemented on your corporate laptops, because the attack came through the airwaves on an analog frequency from the 1970s.
Wow.
It perfectly highlights how mixing old, unencrypted kinetic technology with modern infrastructure creates a massive, glaring blind spot.
You secure the digital front door with biometric retina scanners, and they just walk right through the analog screen door in the back.
Exactly. And for our third example, let's look at the SFMTA attack in San Francisco in 2016. This is a classic IT incident, laterally cascading into an OT operational nightmare. Ransomware infected the Municipal Transport Agency's IT network.
I remember reading about this one.
Right. Now, it didn't breach the OT systems controlling the trains could still safely drive.
Yep.
But it laterally moved into and disabled the ticketing and fare collection servers.
The screens on the ticket machines just showed a ransom note, right? And they had to leave the physical fare gates open for days.
Right. And they didn't leave them open just out of generosity. If the fare gates are locked and thousands of commuters are pouring into a subterranean station during rush hour, you create a massive physical crush hazard. People can't get to the platforms, the stairs back up, and you have a life safety situation.
Oh, that makes sense.
To prevent that physical safety hazard, they had to force open the fare gates and let everyone ride for free. It's a perfect example of how a purely digital IT ransomware event rapidly translates into physical operational degradation and massive revenue loss.
So just sit with this chilling thought for a moment. When our critical infrastructure relies on opaque, global, multi-tier supply chains and mixed-era technologies, how do you even know who has remote access to your systems? The software vendor in another country? The manufacturer of the legacy radio system? The guy who installed the ticketing server?
The terrifying answer is, usually you don't. You simply don't know all your dependencies. And that is exactly why the industry realized they couldn't just keep patching holes. They needed a radical new mathematical way of managing this risk.
All right, let's pivot to the solution, because otherwise this is just a very depressing hour of horror stories. If patching is illegal because it voids safety certs and the perimeter is 5,000 miles of open countryside, what is the industry actually doing? This is where the CNELEC TS 50701 standard comes into play.
Yes, TS 57701. This technical specification is currently the absolute gold standard for railway cybersecurity. What makes it brilliant isn't that it invents some magical new security hardware.
Okay, then what is it?
It's brilliant because it mathematically and procedurally forces cybersecurity directly into the existing functional safety lifecycle, which is governed by an older standard called EN 50126.
Unpack that for us. How does it actually work in practice?
First, it completely stops treating the railway as one giant, unmanageable monolith. You don't try to secure the railway. TS 50701 forces engineers to define very specific zones called the SISI, or System Under Consideration.
So you break the element down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. You define the onboard zone, which is the physical train itself, the train control and management system, the passenger Wi-Fi. Then you define the trackside zone, the interlockings, the balances on the track, the radio block centers, and finally the central zone, the SCADA systems, the traffic management systems back at headquarters.
Okay, so once you've logically zoned it out, how do you fix the cultural and legal conflict between the 25-year-old IT SOC analyst who wants to patch everything and the 60-year-old railway safety engineer who refuses to let them touch it?
You force them into a room together to do what's called safety security co-engineering. This is the entire beating heart of TS 10701.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. Historically, the safety engineer would do a system hazard analysis, or SHA, to figure out what could mechanically cause the train to crash, like a brake pad wearing out or a relay failing.
They use things like fault tree analysis, right? Calculating the probability of a mechanical failure based on wear and tear physics.
Exactly. And completely separately, in another building, the security guy would do a threat analysis and risk assessment, or TARA, to figure out what could be hacked, calculating likelihood times impact.
And the mathematical models never overlapped. I mean, how do you integrate a cyber threat vector, which is a deterministic, intelligent action by a hacker, into a purely mechanical fault tree?
It used to be impossible. Co-engineering forces you to mathematically weave the SHA into the TARA using a unified matrix. The ultimate unbreakable rule that TS 50701 establishes is this: A security control must never violate a safety invariant.
Give me a concrete example of a safety invariant interacting with a security control.
Okay, a safety invariant is a hard mathematical rule, like if trackside communication is lost for more than 2 seconds, the train must immediately apply the emergency brake.
All right.
So if the IT security team proposes adding a heavy encryption layer to the trackside communication to stop spoofing, they have to mathematically prove in the Terra that the cryptographic processing time will never, under any CPU load, exceed that 2-second safety invariant.
Because if the encryption takes 2.1 seconds to process, the safety logic assumes the connection is dead and stops the train.
Right. So if they can't prove it mathematically, the security control is outright rejected. Safety always wins.
That makes total sense on a systemic level. But what about the remote access problem? What about the maintenance guy with the 4G modem or the cloud vendor who needs to pull diagnostic logs?
TS 50701 lays down brutal guardrails for vendor remote access, specifically targeting predictive maintenance pipelines. The standard dictates that any vendor remote access can no longer be a persistent, always open backdoor.
Okay.
It mandates 4 strict conditions. Access must be requested, logged, time-limited, and require multi-factor authentication.
So instead of letting vendors just leave an unmonitored backdoor open for 30 years, we are forcing them into a digital prenup where they have to explicitly ask permission every single time they want to look at the engine data.
Digital prenup, I like that.
Yeah.
Yes. The vendor has to call the central control room, request a maintenance window, authenticate with MFA, and after exactly, say, 60 minutes, the cryptographic session token expires and the connection is forcefully severed by the firewall.
That is a massive improvement. And what about protecting the genuine air gap from the flat network issue? If a hacker does compromise the passenger Wi-Fi on the onboard zone, how do we physically stop them from traversing the network and reaching the breaks?
Hardware solutions. Specifically, the standard heavily leans on the use of unidirectional data diodes.
I love the concept of data diodes. Explain how physical physics solves a software routing problem.
It's beautiful in its absolute simplicity. A data diode is a physical piece of hardware placed between 2 network zones, say, the highly secure OT braking network and the less secure passenger Wi-Fi network. Inside the diode, the connection isn't copper wire.
What is it?
It's a fiber optic cable. On the secure side, there's only an optical transmitter, a gallium arsenide laser that sends light pulses. On the insecure side, there is only an optical receiver, a photocell that receives light.
So data can physically, fundamentally only travel in one direction.
Precisely. The secure network can broadcast diagnostic telemetry data out to the monitoring servers on the insecure side. But because there is literally, physically no laser on the insecure side to send light back, it is mathematically impossible for a hacker on the passenger Wi-Fi to send a malicious command in.
You can't hack the laws of physics.
Exactly, you can't hack light. It allows the OT network to export data for predictive maintenance while maintaining a true physical air gap.
Wait, hold on. I love the physical physics of it. You can't hack light. But operationally, let's think about this. If data only flows one way out of the secure zone, how the hell does the central control room send an emergency stop command in if they see a catastrophic failure on the telemetry? Doesn't a physical diode break bidirectional safety controls? You need the TCP handshake just to confirm receipt of the data.
That is exactly the multi-million-dollar architectural headache that engineers fight over. You're right. TCP requires a bidirectional handshake, so a diode breaks standard TCP traffic. To fix the network protocol issue, you have to use UDP proxies on both sides of the diode to basically spoof the handshake and blind fire the packets across the light gap.
And for the safety controls?
For the safety controls, you have to completely decouple monitoring from actuation. The diode is only used for exporting non-critical telemetry and logs to the IT network, actual bidirectional control pathways. The signals that move switches and stop trains use strict, dedicated hard lines with deterministic cryptographic key exchanges that are completely segregated from the IT or vendor networks. You never route safety commands to the same interface that handles predictive maintenance logs.
Okay, that clarifies it. It's a massive architectural separation. But this brings us to the elephant in the room. We hear a lot about rules on paper, but implementing them is a different story. If you go to any cybersecurity conference today, the only thing anyone is talking about is zero trust.
Oh, don't get me started.
Assume breach. Never trust. Always verify. But from everything we've just discussed about legacy flat networks and PLCs from 1998, applying zero trust architecture to a railway seems completely absurd.
It borders on the delusional. Implementing true zero trust, which involves continuous cryptographic authentication of every single user and device, dynamic policy enforcement, and granular microsegmentation of the network, is physically impossible in legacy OT environments.
I mean, we know old protocols like Modbus TCP or cleartext. There's no authentication header. You can't just slap a zero-trust policy engine onto a legacy serial bus.
Exactly, it's a hardware limitation. Remember those trackside PLCs? They literally do not have the compute power, the CPU cycles, or the memory to perform continuous cryptographic authentication.
Yeah.
If you ask a 1998 track switch controller to perform a modern TLS 1.3 handshake and validate a BY509 certificate every time it needs to send a status packet, the CPU will melt down.
Yeah.
You cannot wrap zero trust around a silicon chip that doesn't understand what a password is.
So how do you secure a legacy network that physically cannot be upgraded to modern security standards? Because that sounds like an unsolvable paradox.
It requires a massive cultural shift. Historically, security boundaries in OT were physical, a padlock on a metal door. Now those boundaries have to be logical. But since you cannot install a modern endpoint detection agent like a CrowdStrike or a Sentinel and antivirus directly onto a fragile legacy train controller without freezing it, you have to rely on the only practical solution left.
Which is?
Passive visibility.
Passive visibility. Detail the mechanics of that.
Because the critical systems are safety certified and incredibly fragile, you cannot use active host agents. You can't touch the system and you can't scan it with Nmap. So instead you just watch it. Use passive network monitoring via hardware taps or span ports on the core network switches. You quietly copy the data flowing across the network wire and send it to a separate, physically isolated monitoring tool equipped with rail-aware deep packet inspection, or DPI.
Okay, let's elevate an analogy here. It's like trying to teach a 1980s VCR to use facial recognition to know who is pressing the play button.
Okay, I'm tracking.
The VCR physically doesn't have the circuitry for it. Since it can't, you just put a very smart security camera pointed at the VCR to see who is pushing the buttons. You don't alter the VCR's internal circuitry at all, you just monitor the environment around it.
That is surprisingly accurate, yes.
Yeah.
You never touch the safety critical asset. You just watch the traffic flowing across what TS 50701 calls the conduits between the different zones. The DPI tool, sitting on the span port, understands the specific esoteric railway protocols. It unpacks the Modbus or Profibus packets in real time. It does state machine tracking.
So it knows what normal looks like.
Exactly. It knows that this specific IP address belongs to a track switch, and mathematically, that switch should only ever send a status update message to the central server. If the passive monitor suddenly sees that same switch trying to send a firmware rewrite message, or trying to communicate with an unauthorized external IP address, like our maintenance worker's 4G modem, it instantly triggers massive alarms in the SOC, the Security Operations Center.
And it does all of this without ever sending a single active probe or TCP SYM packet to the fragile OT device. It just listens.
It just listens. Sustained visibility into the operational network. You turn opaque legacy control flows into measurable, actionable telemetry. And I really want to emphasize to the listener here, this methodology isn't just about trains.
Right, this applies everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
The power grid, water treatment plants, chemical manufacturing facilities, oil pipelines. We live in a modern, hyper-connected world that is completely, fundamentally reliant on critical infrastructure running on 20, 30, even 40-year-old technology.
Yeah.
You cannot patch it all. You cannot replace it all overnight. You have to watch the interfaces. You have to monitor the conduits.
Which brings us to the synthesis of this entire deep dive. We've gone from the sprawl of the signaling houses, to the maintenance guys buying rogue modems, to the brutal mathematical war between CIA and RAMs. We've seen hackers trigger emergency brakes with analog walkie-talkies, explored the elegant physics of data diodes, and unpacked the absolute necessity of passive DPI monitoring.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. I want to pull all of this together and leave you, the listener, with one final, deeply provocative thought that really crystallized for me while reading through the appendices of these sources.
Get on me.
As an industry and as a society, we are moving rapidly toward fully autonomous driverless trains. The sources talk extensively about FRMCS, the Future Railway Mobile Communication System, which is essentially a dedicated 5G network for trains, enabling massive real-time data exchange, AI diagnostics, and remote autonomous control. But if the 30-year-old train wasn't built for the internet, and the internet certainly wasn't built for safety, who actually owns the risk?
That's a huge issue.
When a software vendor remotes in from across the globe, over a 5G network into a trackside interlocking system that was built when dial-up internet was cutting edge.
Yeah.
And an AI algorithm is dynamically managing the braking distance based on passive telemetry exported through a UDP proxy. Who is truly driving the train? Is it the local operator? The cloud software vendor? The telecom provider hosting the 5G slice?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, and it's going to be the absolute liability nightmare of the next decade.
That's all for this episode of Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons.
Check your PLCs. Check your logs. And maybe, just maybe, question whether that air gap is really an air gap.
See you in the next chapter.
You have been listening to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Real incidents leave real lessons. Stay prepared. Stay critical. And keep following the evidence.